Saiyan MGTOW here with over 9,000 opinions. Welcome to the video. This is going to be a response to John Oliver's segment, Police. We're just going to follow along and I'll stop it when I feel the need to.
Hello there, and welcome to the show. And look, we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. Our whole show is actually going to be about one thing, and you probably know what, and you probably know why. Because all week long, protesters have continued to fill the streets in all 50 states in the wake of the horrific murder of George Floyd by the police. And in response to those protests, which have been a stirring pushback against institutional racism and brutality, it's been frankly sickening.
Yeah, the protests have been stirring. So stirring in a positive way, but also in a negative way. With weird messages like white silence is violence, and no justice, no peace, and Black Lives Matter. All slogans that I think do more harm than good. Perhaps the protests and the media response were so stirring that the riots and looting that erupted were much worse than they would have been, if they were going to happen at all. It's possible. Do I think Black Lives Matter? Of course. I think 97% of Americans have thought that since at least 1989, before I was born. But let's say Black Lives Matter succeeds, and literally everyone in America knows that Black Lives Matter. Okay, what about gays? What about Asians? What about Hispanics? What about Jews? Do all those groups have to get together and start a movement after a straw breaks that camel's back? How do you think the people with cerebral palsy will react when we have the next nationwide movement, Down Syndrome Lives Matter? How do you think females would feel if there was a nationwide movement called Male Lives Matter? Because males are way overrepresented in homelessness, murder victims, public humiliation, war deaths, overdose deaths, suicides, etc. Now you might be thinking, well, males are the highest in those numbers, not really because they are persecuted for being male, but for other reasons, like testosterone and not caring for their lives as much. And I'll agree with that. Hence why I'm making this video about all the other reasons besides racism why some black people feel the need to proclaim that Black Lives Matter, even though any thinking person understands that they do. End of first rant.
To see them met with this.
Across the country, peaceful protests have too often devolved into standoffs with heavily armed police using military-style tactics. Flashbangs, tear gas, rubber bullets, helicopters, armored vehicles.
We're out here peacefully protesting, but they're armed like they're going to war.
Yeah, they are. And look, if police are trying to convince the public they're not guilty of displaying excessive force, it's probably not a good idea to repeatedly display excessive force on national television, including in this city.
Okay, so he's not going to mention the looting and rioting. He's not going to mention that Target and AutoZone and the cop shop and other buildings like the Black Firefighters Bar that got razed to the ground and the police did nothing about it. Were there and are there peaceful protests? Yes. And have the police been using excessive force on those peaceful protests for the past few weeks? Yes. But there came a point where the cities needed to start having curfews and clear streets because the rioting and looting was continuing unchecked for too long and the streets were very deadly at night, and so the police took their cities back. Again, admittedly, they did so way too forcefully at times, and against completely peaceful protesters at times. But also they were clearing the streets of people who thought they could get away with robbing the city blind and setting buildings on fire willy-nilly under the cover of night.
When Mayor de Blasio praised them for their tremendous restraint, and Governor Cuomo threatened to send in the National Guard. And I'll say this, having recently said that I couldn't wait to go go back to hating Andrew Cuomo again. I didn't think the opportunity would come quite this soon. And
There are hundreds of videos of people breaking into stores and looting and burning, and the cops aren't doing anything about it, just watching. If the cops are standing by and letting cities devolve into burning ash piles and the murder rate go up 100% or 200%, then I support the National Guard moving in and protecting Americans that still want some form of law and order. But we didn't need that in the end because the police started doing their jobs and clearing the streets.
these protesters have received a great deal of support, with massive marches taking place all around the world. And the protesters' message has taken many forms, from chants to signs to a man who called into an LA Police Commission meeting held over Zoom. Now, he'd been given 30 seconds, which he used with maximum efficiency to deliver a message for Police Chief Michael Moore.
I find it disgusting that the LAPD is slaughtering peaceful protesters on the street. I had 2 friends go to the protest in Beverly Hills a couple days ago, and the protest was peaceful until the police showed up with their excessive violent force, shooting rubber bullets and throwing tear gas. Is this what you think of protecting and serving? Because I think it's bullshit. Fuck you, Michael Moore. I refuse to call you an officer or a chief because you don't deserve those titles. You are a disgrace. Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
If the president...
Slaughtering peaceful protesters in the street? Okay, what percentage of the people that the LAPD have killed since the George Floyd protests started were being completely peaceful? Really, I'm asking. Now, I bet it was some. But I bet it was less than 5%. But yeah, the rubber bullets and tear gas can be improperly used and might not have been needed when they were used, and I'm sure both of those misuses happened all across the country. I do see problems in a lot of the choices that a lot of the police make. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy that police have a giant spotlight on them right now, and that there is a call for change and accountability. We needed that. Clearly, because George Floyd and Tony Timpa should be alive today. But again, there comes a point where you take your city back. And if people don't give a fuck about that, then that is a major problem. And some people think tear gas, when properly used and manufactured, can be a good solution for that, and I agree.
is taking notes. That is what a perfect call looks like. My favourite part is that after he's finished unloading on that police chief, he yields his time, realises he still has a couple of seconds left, so unyields it and throws in a bonus, fuck you. Now, as for the president himself, he initially hid from the protesters in a bunker, later claiming he wasn't hiding, he was actually just inspecting it. Then his attorney general had police gas protesters outside the White House so that Trump could have an inexplicable photo op at a nearby church while holding up a Bible like it's the ticket for his sandwich order that was just called. He also, in announcing job numbers on...
I genuinely laughed hard the first time I watched this part. My only comment is that that church is important to a lot of people and kind of a national landmark, unfortunately. So Trump was kind of like putting up an American flag on the spire and being like, see, we still have this church and it's under the protection of the law and not a mob who were trying to burn it down. Now, were there peaceful protesters there too? Yes. But also a mob trying to burn down a national landmark. It seems like that's what happened anyway. And if the commander-in-chief can't stop a mob 2 blocks away from his house, why should anyone think he could keep anyone safe? I think it's going to be part 1. We'll be back.